name is Sayshara. I want to say, while willing, you're in good spirits, you're in the best of health, and life is definitely treating you well. So the telephone numbers are for those people that's locked in and tuned in for this Sunday afternoon on here, Sayshara Sunday interactive talk show. The telephone numbers for Fertility Radio is 073 054 17668. I want to big up Sister Ebony for the last couple of hours of edifying and informative talk conversations with you, the fertility listeners out there. And there's a lot of things I want to go through for the next couple of hours. So I'm interested in your participation, obviously. And I'm interested in your views, your perspective, your experience, your knowledge, and how you're seeing things out there. And what we're talking about is what's going on out there, what's live out there right now. We need to be concerned about so many issues and implications and difficulties dealing with our lives right now. And I know there's a lot of conversations, a lot of people got a lot of stories to tell about different things out there. And I think that we need to question what's going on out there, more importantly, as well as having to cope and readjust our everyday lives. So I'm interested in how people are actually dealing with these things, okay? I know Ebony was recently talking about what's going on with the medical industry, and there's so much things going on there, so many different stories coming out. And should we be concerned? Of course we should be concerned, okay? Because we live in a world today where everything is interconnected and interrelated, okay? And we have to deal with a lot of things to do with services that generally we're used to having to just go to wherever we want to go, okay? But at the moment, we're restricted in so many different ways. I think in the medical industry, in terms of how some people are coping with that, for example, we know that people have already pre-planned appointments for all kinds of manner of things. It could be an operation, for example, a serious operation, for example. It could be a mild operation. It could be something where it's just ongoing. You're having regular treatments and stuff like that. It'd be interesting to know how the National Health Service is coping with people and dealing with that. We know they're having to deal with a plethora of issues around dealing with this current situation, which is referred to as a COVID-19 coronavirus pandemic, and has been going on for some few months now since the China, this epicenter of the whole thing since November. And as time has gone by, it's swept across the globe. And I think we started checking in around, in this country, the UK, or Great Britain and Northern Ireland, we was touched with it around about, we're in March, April now, okay? So I'm losing track of time because we're not actually doing, no reason to focus on time because everybody's not really doing anything. Everybody's been, we call under martial law, or they're imprisoned, or, you know what I'm saying? You've got these conditions going on, but there's a lot of restrictions, and those restrictions and laws that are presently governing our lives, okay, are at the BS of the government and at no one else. So basically, you've got really laws, and if you look at these laws, whether these laws are justified, some people argue they want to argue the case that, well, because of the severity and whole aspect of the COVID-19 being contagious and being infectious and things like that, getting really paranoid or protective or overprotective in some cases, for some people, that people, generally think that, yeah, whatever the measures are to protect people, generally, yes, you've got to be able to justify by taking these measures, okay? And they're happy to follow the government's guidelines on the emergency laws which they put out. And people can look at these emergency laws. I don't understand how very, very quickly they actually put out so many laws. I think it was, so many pages that tells you how much time they spent writing this document up. So I think they said that there was about over 300 pages that they made up these emergency laws, okay? Maybe some of these laws are old laws that they just brought in from World War II or World War I or whatever, okay? And some of these laws, you have to ask the question, ask some of these laws too draconian? Are they too draconian? Are they extreme? Are they borderline fascism, Nazism, or Nazism, I should say, yeah? Are they all about that, okay? Because, for example, elderly people, I spoke about that recently, the way that elderly have been demonized and, how they've been viewed as kind of like leopards in a way. You can't go around there and you can't do this and you can't do that with them. You know what I'm saying? And, yeah, you want to consider how serious the situation is, okay? And you have to, I think people need to have their own minds to be able to think about how they need to deal with their own family members in certain ways. And I think the government's got no rights really to tell people how to, well, not to go and visit their family. Do you know what I'm saying? I mean, to me, that just shows that you expect people to just all of a sudden just be irresponsible towards their families, just like that, just because the government has put out, well, your government, our government, all governments across the globe are putting out these very, very extreme measures, okay, without actually evaluating whether these measures, especially to do with how we need to be able to look after our elderlies, are rationalized in a way that it even makes sense, So yeah, they've got out this bill, 329-page bill, which allow for more phone and video hearings in court so the justice system can keep going, okay? This is what they're saying, right? And also, they're saying all kinds of things, all right? And one of the things that was alarming in terms of talking about the medical industry that we need to be concerned about, and to me, there is a lot of questions that we need to be asking about the equipments that they're talking about, this whole test kits, the way people are tested for COVID-19. Does it even make sense? It's like they're saying to you that really they're testing you for a new disease. This is what they're saying. They're testing you for a new disease. Now, if it's a new disease, let's say if it's a new disease, how do they know what's the right type of test to make without actually going through a preliminary procedure, testing procedure, to validate the accuracy of the testing device or equipment that they're using? All right. So to me, I would question very much that you can actually test, they've got anything that was sophisticated enough and accurate enough to say that they can distinguish between COVID, that you got specific virus called COVID-19. Okay, the problem that we have, and there's quite a few anomalies that people have been talking about, and I'm just going to touch on one or two, and maybe there's some that you may know yourself or you may be aware of that you've witnessed yourself or you've heard directly from people that you know. Okay, because that's where it's all going to start from. It's about the kind of conversations and discussions and dialogues that we're having, the way we're communicating with each other right now. Okay, that's what's really important. That's how we're going to get the truth out. I don't think you're going to get the truth in terms of depending on the mainstream media and the type of propaganda that I'm looking at that they're propagating every day, every hour of the week, and for how many months. So you have to be able to inform yourself or get edified yourself, or you can get platforms like this for Ferrity Radio, where you can join me, Sayshara, and we can really have an open conversation around whatever you like about what you see out there, what's happening right now, and it's live, and we're all affected by it. But yeah, let me see if I can play this. Right? So there's so much information, yeah, that I don't even need to talk. I can just play information all day long.
A hysterical slide into a police state. A shameful police force intruding with scant regard to common sense or tradition. An irrational overreaction driven by fear. These are not the accusations of wild-eyed campaigners. They come from the lips of one of our most eminent jurists, Lord Sumption, former Justice of the Supreme Court.
The real problem is that when human societies lose their freedom, it's not usually because tyrants have taken it away. It's usually because people willingly surrender their freedom in return for protection against some external threat. We should not be surprised, but we have to recognize that this is how societies become despotisms. And we also have to recognize that this is a process which leads naturally to exaggeration. I'm not a scientist, but it is the right and duty of every citizen to look and see what the scientists have said and to analyze it for themselves and to draw common sense conclusions. We are all perfectly capable of doing that, and there's no particular reason why the scientific nature of the problem should mean that we have to resign our liberty into the hands of scientists. We all have critical faculties, and it's rather important in a moment of national panic that we should maintain them.
Lord Sumption, former Justice of the Supreme Court. I spoke to him about his concerns before we came on air.
The real problem is that when human societies lose their freedom, it's not usually because tyrants have taken it away. It's usually because people willingly surrender their freedom in return for protection against some external threat. And the threat is usually a real threat, but usually exaggerated. And that's what I fear we are seeing now. The pressure on politicians has come from the public. They want action. They don't pause to ask whether the action will work. They don't ask themselves whether the cost will be worth paying. They want action anyway. And anyone who has studied history will recognize here the classic symptoms of collective hysteria. Hysteria is infectious. We are working ourselves up into a lather in which we exaggerate the threat and stop asking ourselves whether the cure may be worse than the disease.
At a time like this, as you acknowledge, citizens do look to the state for protection, for assistance. We shouldn't be surprised then if the state takes on new powers, if it responds. That is what it has been asked to do, almost demanded of it.
Yes, that is absolutely true. We should not be surprised. But we have to recognize that this is how societies become despotisms. And we also have to recognize that this is a process which leads naturally to exaggeration. The symptoms of coronavirus are clearly serious for those with other significant medical conditions, especially if they're old. There are exceptional cases in which young people have been struck down, which have had a lot of publicity, but the numbers are pretty small. The Italian evidence, for instance, suggests that only 12% of deaths, is it possible to say, coronavirus was the main cause of death. So yes, this is serious, and yes, it's understandable that people cry out to the government. But the real question is this serious enough to warrant putting most of our population into house imprisonment, wrecking our economy for an indefinite period, destroying businesses that honest and hard-working people have taken years to build up, saddling future generations with debt, depression, stress, heart attacks, suicides, and unbelievable distress inflicted on millions of people who are not especially vulnerable and will suffer only mild symptoms or none at all, like the Health Secretary and the Prime Minister.
The executive, the government, is all of a sudden really rather powerful and really rather unscrutinised. Parliament is in recess. It's due to come back in late April. We're not quite sure whether it will or not. The Prime Minister is closeted away, communicating via his phone. There is not a lot in the way of scrutiny, is there?
No. Certainly there's not a lot in the way of institutional scrutiny. The press has engaged in a fair amount of scrutiny. There has been some good and challenging journalism. But mostly the press has, I think, echoed and indeed amplified the general panic.
The restrictions in movement have also changed the relationship between the police and those whose in name, at least, they serve. The police are naming and shaming citizens for travelling at what they see as the wrong time or driving to the wrong place. Does that set alarm bells ringing for you as a former senior member of the judiciary?
Well, I have to say it does. The tradition of policing in this country is that policemen are citizens in uniform. They are not members of a disciplined hierarchy operating just at the government's command. Yet in some parts of the country, the police have been trying to stop people from doing things like travelling to take exercise in the open country, which are not contrary to the regulations, simply because ministers have said that they would prefer us not to. The police have no power to enforce ministers' preferences, but only legal regulations, which don't go anything like as far as the government's guidance. I have to say that the behaviour of the Derbyshire police in trying to shame people into using their undoubted right to travel to take exercise in the country and wrecking beauty spots in the fells so that people don't want to go there is frankly disgraceful. This is what a police state is like. It's a state in which the government can issue orders or express preferences with no legal authority, and the police will enforce ministers' wishes. I have to say that most police forces have behaved in a thoroughly sensible and moderate fashion. Derbyshire police have shamed our policing traditions. There is a natural tendency, of course, and a strong temptation for the police to lose sight of their real functions and turn themselves from citizens in uniform into glorified school prefects. I think it's really sad that the Derbyshire police have failed to resist that.
There will be people listening who admire your legal wisdom, but will also say, well, he's not an epidemiologist. He doesn't know how disease spreads. He doesn't understand the risks to the health service if this thing gets out of control. What do you say to them?
What I say to them is I'm not a scientist, but it is the right and duty of every citizen to look and see what the scientists have said and to analyse it for themselves and to draw common sense conclusions. We are all perfectly capable of doing that, and there's no particular reason why the scientific nature of the problem should mean that we have to resign our liberty into the hands of scientists. We all have critical faculties, and it's rather important in a moment of national panic that we should maintain them.
Lord Sumption, former Justice of the Supreme Court, speaking to me a bit earlier. We put his criticism of Derbyshire Police to the force, and it sent us this statement. Our advice to the public was in line with national government instruction and echoed what people in our communities were saying following thousands of people that travelled to the Peak District National Park the previous weekend. The weekend just gone saw much smaller numbers, and we thank the public for their response. That's from Derbyshire Police.
Yeah, for Ferity Radio, Sayshara back in the house. Okay, you heard that information there from. You can get that. Okay, I'm gonna remind you where you can go and get that information.
A hysterical slide.
That's Lord Sumption. If you go to BitChute,
police force intruding with scant regard to common sense.
right? Yeah, if you go to BitChute, okay, BitChute, okay. Right, it says BitChute, but I need to give you more than that, right?
Or tradition, and irrational overreaction driven by.
Right, okay. So here we are, here in London, sunny London. Don't forget. Under a lot of restrictions, just like everybody else, I would imagine. And yeah, we're talking about a lot of stuff to do with vaccine. Like I said, it's a big subject, okay? Just touching on it, really, more than anything else, okay? And that little video clip is called Irrational Overreaction. So if you actually go to former FMR, former Supreme Court judge, speaks against hysteria-driven government coronavirus policy. Let me repeat that because I messed up. Yeah. So if you go to BitChute or just tap in former, and there's lots of links there. Former Supreme Court judge speaks against hysteria-driven government coronavirus policy. Okay. There may be another video. If we get time, we can go through. All right. But I need to go somewhere else now. Remember, I'm walking you through this journey. Okay. And I'm not telling you what it is. I'm just giving you information so you can check out for yourself. All right. And you make your own decision. Okay. We're piecing the puzzle together. Okay. To work things out because nobody's telling us anything. Let's be real. For all we know, they're covering up this. The top level governments, they know what's going on and they're covering up, okay? Because they want to push out this so-called RFR, right? Technology, okay? At whatever cost, okay? At whatever cost of life or whatever cost in resources, okay? And I don't think I'm going to be able to prove anything on that today because of time. I don't have enough time to cover it, but next week we'll cover RFR in great lengths and details, and then I'm probably going to be done with all of this stuff, okay? But I needed for people to see things, well, from different perspectives, okay? So they get an idea of what's going on rather than, you're getting the information from mainstream media and it's just drip, really tedious, continue to really put a spell under you, to put you in a spell, continue to program you and indoctrinate you and to accept whatever they're saying and whatever they want to roll out. You're going to be willing participant. You're going to be willing to participate. You're going to be willing on whatever they say they're going to do on the testing equipment, which is questionable, right? On how the death certificates, them even labeling you, giving you labels that you died of COVID-19 when you didn't, or family members accepting that. Stand up, innit? Stand up for your rights, yeah? You're going to accept all kinds of things. They're going to bring out all these emergency laws, a long list of things. This is like I said, the ruling class, the elite, they're on steroids right now because they're in the best position. They never had a better position now where they got you where they want you, which is a place where they can legally control the things that they need to do behind the scenes, okay? Because now you're not able to move around, you're not able to communicate as much and do things as much, okay? You're not able to come together. You can't demonstrate, you can't protest, even though I heard there was going to be a protest somewhere in London.